Good morning, Smite fans. It's Thursday, and you know what that means. It's another day of the Smite Challenger Circuit. And we're going to be starting things over in the European region today, and then we'll move our way over in towards North America. It's the second week of the SCC going on. My name is J-Mac. I got Mifflin joining me. So we got 4 sets today, 2 in EU, 2 in NA, and we're going to be starting things off with the Nifleheim Wargs up against the Styx Ferryman. Do you get a look at some of maybe the new roster popping up, Miff, as we do have a few subs that's going to be coming out pretty much throughout the entirety of today.
Man, the entirety of last week as well, right? If we keep seeing these roster changes and these sub-ins, I'm going to take away these legacy names, all right? We're just going to have different players against different players. But you're right to bring up some of the changes today. For example, Niflheim Wargs, we're going to have Okeanos out, Rotwin in, Styx Ferryman. We're taking out the young man Angry and instead replacing him with Itori. Those are the only changes for this set. But as you said, we've got plenty coming up throughout the entirety of today, so keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of roster shakeups and should make for some very fun games with all this new talent kind of shifting around the different region and shifting around all the different teams. We'll get to take a look at the schedule and everything like that so you can see what all matches are going to be played out throughout today. We'll take a look at all the standings. We can see all the great stuff. That's available to you guys for the NA SCC. The EU SCC, though, as I said earlier, is where we're going to be starting. Niflheim Wargs and Styx Ferryman up first, and then Highland Ravens and Hex Mambo going to be our second set of the day. And then to round out the EU, we'll start tomorrow morning at 11 a.m., and that'll have the Gilded Gladiators up against the Aarhus Scorpions, which, if I'm not mistaken, the Gilded Gladiators is where Rotwin, the current now player for the Niflheim Wargs, is actually from. So now taking a shift away from Spaniard Brothers and moving over to Niflheim Wargs. Now looking at the standings, we can see, it's only week 1, so everybody's still sitting tied at first or tied at 4th at this case here with 1-0s or 0-1s respectively.
Yeah, been a very back-and-forth region throughout the entirety of the last couple of years, it feels like. But, occasionally we'll have one team separating themselves. Elysium comes to mind as a squad that was able to really push themselves up and over. But it feels like the EU and North American SEC, for that matter, have been so competitive that top spot is just whoever's feeling the best on play day, whoever really is finding that consistency. So you have to watch every single week, every single day on Thursdays if you want to keep track of these brackets, because it's not like the old days. It's not like you can just say, oh, well, this team's going to beat everybody. It feels like everyone's taking games on everyone.
Yeah, everybody's really been able to kind of bounce themselves back and forth, especially in the EU region. You never know exactly which team is going to be going through. The Niflheim Wargs, though, were a team that were able to find some success last phase. They were able to find some great success through their run during the Masters tournament that came through recently, and a lot of it through the success of their jungler, Sarpei, able to find some really key early picks for his team, try and get the ball rolling early, because as we know at the EU region, they were already kind of going a bit longer before we hit the 9.5 patch. Then as the 9.5 patch came through, we were starting to get even longer sets out of them, but the Wargs were a team that did like to take some of these early battles.
Yeah, they were, and you bring up Sarpei, and I think that's a good point, because when you look at Sarpei's god pool, things like the Kali, the Nemesis come to mind, these auto-attack late-game junglers, but you are right in saying that he is one of the most proactive early game junglers as well. He wants to get active on the map. He wants to establish that lead for himself so that he can transition well into that mid to late game. And when you look at the drafts built around Sarpei, it's a lot of scalers and it's a lot of backline protection. You'll see Ganeshes, you'll see multi-stacking mid laners. Baba Yaga, a great example of that. Spudio always playing these late game slanted hunters, or generally Heimdall if he's allowed to play it, which is all he's playing if it's available to him, but a very safe laner that doesn't really need the presence of that jungler. So it feels like this is a squad that has really figured out what style of play they're looking for, and they've been iterating on it continually, and they've been looking better for it.
Yeah, they've been able to do so. And then Styx Ferryman on the opposite side of the team, they're playing against a little bit of tenure talent on their team, especially the way the jungler Ice, he's been around the league for such a long time, professional level and amateur level, so having his matchup against Sarpei in the jungle will be one to definitely watch up. But I think this mid lane matchup here as well with Gunter in the mid, he's been really able to find his stride in the mid lane. He's been able to find some of those comfort picks and still kind of sticking to maybe a little bit some more of the old meta. Tiamat's not a god that we're seeing as much. Same thing with Merlin. We haven't really seen Gunter flex over towards more of these hunter mid styles that we've been seeing like at the SPL level.
And that's something that you could say for the entirety of this team. They're not all really looking to adapt to what everybody else is doing. I mean, even looking at the draft on your screen right now, you're seeing a lot of old standouts, like a Thulu lock-in, a Chalk in the jungle. These are stylistic choices and pieces that maybe only the individuals on this squad are really looking to play continually, but it has worked out very well for them, and it has historically worked out in Smite because of just standard Smite knowledge. Classical knowledge indicates that you got a Guardian over in the Soul Lane or an Initiator on your team. You've got a decent backline to find that damage. It's always going to find a way to work itself out. And the Styx Ferryman, they agree. They don't want to play around with this new new age double hunter, triple hunter composition. They're not concerned about that, and instead have stuck with that classical Smite style, and it's found them mitigated success at times, but still success nonetheless.
And over in that solo lane, I mean, Beazrio was a player who came in as a sub during the Phase 3 playoffs about 6-8 months ago whenever it came down to that team. He's been able to make some pretty good strides in the SCC as the solo laner now for this team. But picks and bans for game number 1 between the Nifleheim Wargs and the Styx Ferryman ready to go. We've been seeing a lot of kind of how the meta has developed at the SCC level. Gods like Chernobog are still at the top. And Yu Huang is actually a god that we saw a little bit of during the SPL this past weekend. And I was wondering how often we were going to be seeing him over in the SCC. Turns out the Nifleheim Wargs don't want to deal with him at all. First ban.
I feel like Yu Huang is just really good, man. I mean, he's got great early game. Levels 1 through 3, not levels 4 through 9 to 12. That's when he generally starts to struggle. But that early 1 through 3 that allows you to get a good start for your jungler. You can find some pressure in the lane thanks to that root, thanks to the damage output. He's got decent wave clear as well. But the main strength of Yu Huang is that initiation ability. The ultimate is so good if you're able to instantly toss it out, relocate 1-2 members of the enemy team in a team fight, pull them towards your own allies, or even push them away if you need to peel for yourself. So powerful. And even if you aren't using your ultimate for peel, you generally won't have to because he's got such great survivability in that third ability. If you guys haven't played Yu Huang at home, just think about it like Charybdis. Whatever Charybdis is doing, Yu Huang's doing essentially the exact same thing.
With all the bans that have rolled through, Yu Huang, Yamoja, King Arthur on the side of the Nifleheim Wargs. Styx Ferryman have taken away Kali, Uller, and Heimdall, who is pretty much an EU exclusive. We do see, shades of life in the NA region, but the EU area really does seem to love this Heimdall pick. It's something that they have been striving with. And then Mercury is a first pick. No surprise as to how popular we've been seeing him in the jungle. And Styx Ferryman will round out their top 2 with a Khepri and a Baba Yaga, who's become a very popular mage in all regions, really.
Yeah, that's a slow start for your first 2 in the draft for Styx Ferryman. Khepri really doesn't get a whole lot of pressure in his lane. Needs a little while before that ultimate becomes available and he can really be an asset in these team fights. Baba Yaga generally leans herself towards that double stacking style of build. Book of Thoth, Warlock Staff, great survivability, good mana infusion. If you go towards Book of the Dead, it feels like you're nearly unkillable. But that's all 15, 16 minutes into the game, and now with Nemesis locked in with them, another late game selection means this is going to be a slanted draft for Styx Ferryman. That's going to take a little while to get the ball rolling, but we were talking about that earlier. That's what they do. Keep your eyes on this Nemesis. It's not exactly a weak early game, but it's not necessarily one of the strongest, but I expect him to get active nonetheless.
Merlin, Thoth, and so far at least just Jingwei, now adding Achilles to that mix. And Achilles is one that we're not seeing nearly as often anymore. He was very popular kind of the tail end Season A, then he kind of fell off the popularity. Maybe now with the rise of Khepri might be a reason that we're seeing a little bit more of him. It will be Ganesh and Chernobog on the opposite side for the Wargs. Chernobog has really risen, maybe even above Jingwei at this point, to kind of be that top pick hunter across some of these regions. And Baron Samedi, as soon as I was even about to mention the fact that he hasn't even been looked at yet, does get locked in for the Wargs, and this guy has just been a menace over the solo lane.
Great in-combat healing, decent initiation. For the most part, after your 2 items into your build, you could be left alone in that lane, so opportunities in the early for Styx Ferryman to look towards Baron Samedi before he gets that defense online, but once he does, the additional movement speed, the CC immunity in his ultimate, the self-sustain, all makes it very, very hard to shut down this god. Surprised to see the Shiva Lanke lock in, though. That's another selection that's going to be slightly late game slanted, but has decent pressure throughout the early thanks to that branching Bola, but is not a very safe pick, doesn't really have the greatest matchup into the entirety of the Styx Ferryman draft. CC immunity in your dash means that you might be able to avoid some of these sticky situations. Hades will struggle to find those Pillars of Agony, but generally Nemesis is going to have a pretty decent matchup in that she'll just wait out your dash, ult you, and then chase you down with those slows. So expect this Shiba to have a lot of action brought to him, maybe not the other way, though. He doesn't want to fight.
No, he does not want to. Game number 1, though, between the Nifleheim Wargs and the Styx Ferryman are underway and ready to go. We did see Ho Yi as that hunter selection, at least on the side of Styx Ferryman. So it's going to be Rotwin and Streak Up teaming up as the Khepri and the Ho Yi. And then this Hades, it's one that just kind of snuck its way up at the very end there. But with the rise of Bumba's Hammer over in the solo lane, with so many of these mages going over that way, and popularized kind of by Deathwalker, at least in that solo lane, this talent trinket rush out of these Hades.
Yeah, it's just a huge infusion of power. I believe it's 60 at the rank 2. You've got decent sustain built into your kit already, now expanded upon by the lifesteal inside of the Bancroft's Talon once he does finish that up. Which means that it's going to be very difficult to shut down this Hades in lane. He can act as a bully, generally will out-sustain whoever he's laning against, even if it is someone who's got similar levels of sustain. Kha'Zix has the ability to heal himself, but that's through PvP, whereas Hades does it through PvE, which just makes it more consistent in the laning phase. Could lead up to some early blue buff invades. That's what I'm keeping my eyes towards. If the Styx Ferryman are able to leverage that pressure that I'm assuming Azriel should be able to establish for himself, could be that we see Kha'Zix just fall behind by rote. It depends on that jungle presence, though.
Do see kind of the power that Hades can provide earlier on is already nearly full clearing the wave, and that's something that's just been known in Hades' lifetime, is being able to get instant early pressure in whatever lane that he gets started into. But with early pressure in duo, Rotwin in danger, gets knocked up, body blocked a little bit, at least by the support, but not going to fall just yet. Everybody a little bit tankier, a little harder to kill this early on.
Yeah, so difficult to finish off some of those kills. If this is 9-4, that man's dead on the ground, but it's 9-6, so he is not. Azriel, though, will be forced to use the shell, I believe a little bit superfluously. Generally, if you're this early in the game, you have as many potions as Rotwin had for himself, you'd likely just want to hold on to it for the team fight proper. You can see he's already resustained fully back up, and he's got an HP shield from his passive as well from Khepri. He was about 3 or 4, maybe even 5 auto attacks away from actually dying. So that shell maybe didn't need to be used, but is nonetheless. 2 minutes until that's back up.
But it's at least good to see that some people are willing to pop those relics. We've seen many times at all levels of play where people are maybe afraid or a little shy in being able to pop those relics. So Rotwin more than happy to be able to pop that as a just in case, because you never know what kind of sneaky damage might pop through. Right, Azriel rotating over towards the mid camps very early, getting a lot of damage up against Sarpei. It's a 3v2 that Itori is able to dash away from, but Ice is going to continue this chase. Does find the Slice and Dice to slow down Sarpei. He's going to need to use a lot of his kit in order to try and confirm this kill in the 1v1. But I don't know if Ice has the damage to do so. He's just going to, more than anything, kill some time for Sarpei.
He's trying to force Sarpei at least back to base or find a little bit more damage. If you're able to TKO him, you can look towards these back camps, but Sarpei still relatively healthy. Will stick around. Dropped low yet again. This pathing is good. Would lead Ice back towards Itori. Forces out the beads. Can Itori do it on his own?
Itori in the 1v1 against Ice. Dashes down. Slice and Dice should be back up for Ice at any moment. And Itori is now the one on the run now that his CC has been missed out. And now it's going to be a 2v1 for the speed buff. Ice at least going to give up the larger portion for now.
Slow.
But walking back in, they are doing everything they can to hold on. Good CC by Sarpei will mean that Ice can't steal away the speed.
Yeah,
but
Sarpei might just lose his life. Good jukes maintains his life for just a moment. Beads to immune the slow. And Ice will have to let that one go. But even in not stealing away that speed buff, you're at least forcing the two-man split. You're at least removing the beads from Sarpei. That is a pretty high impact play from the Nemesis, who generally should not be the bully at level 3. You'd expect Mercury to be hyper farming, getting that golden blade available, even potentially trying to set up and strip away the relics himself. And instead, his game has been severely slowed down by this Nemesis.
Ice is going to not just steal away the red buff, but also pick that one up. So going to delay his own speed buff, at least for a little while. As far as picking up, might even just go and drop it anyways for the time being. But over in the duo lane, Shell is back up for Rotwin at the very least. So all that engagement earlier on didn't really gain too much in favor of the Nifleheim Wargs. I mean, we're sitting about 4 minutes into the game right now. There's no real level disparity, no real goal discrepancy between the teams, even despite the fact that Ice has been sitting inside of the enemy jungle. Styx Ferryman are able to maintain an even pace. Rotwin engaged on the left-hand side of the map. Sarpei not going to, or at least going to force the shell out. Rotwin does manage to find the dash streak up standing between a couple of them, and Styx Ferryman will be able to make it out.
Yeah, Spudio completely there. Didn't have a whole lot to commit to that fight. No dash forward, poison darts. Not really able to get involved with that either, so it will lead to Rotwin limping himself out of yet another engagement. Does lose out on the shell, so 2 minutes till that's back up yet again. The Nifleheim Wargs may have an opportunity to rotate back over towards that duo lane, but considering it is a Capri and he's at the cusp of level 5, once that Scarab's Blessing becomes available, you gotta think you're losing out on a fair deal of that kill ability in that lane. So Rotwin likely has gotten through. He's weathered the storm, if you would. But the same cannot be said of Kha'Zix on the other side. This Hades is now really starting to hit some power spikes. We've already seen that Azriel has been getting the better end of the majority of this clear, that tier 1 tower down to about 50% HP, and Azriel using all that time to continually rotate and put pressure onto this jungle, controlling the rotation. Sarpe forced to come over to this blue buff.
And I thought for a moment earlier that Ice was going to stick around for the blue buff invade, did go for at least the small back Harpy camp and then warded up the larger one from earlier on, but Ice did end up going back to base instead to pick up their Golden Blade to at least match the Golden Blade that Sarpe has picked up. But you're right to point out that Kha'Zix has just not really been able to get much gold or much farm to himself as he's been pushed under this tier 1 tower for the majority of the game. And that just goes back to what you and I were talking about at the very beginning of just how much pressure that this Hades can put out.
And that's going to continue, at least for the next couple of items. Luckily for Kha'Zix, a pretty significant power spike has been hit. Warlock Staff finally finished up and starting to get stacked up as Sarpe, he's got eyes for Streak Up.
Sonic Boom is good, but the beads are out by Streak Up. Sarpe does find the dash buddy with the poison darts, but with that Scarab's Blessing, that will be enough for Rotwin to get his teammate out of danger.
You know, we had the supports in studio yesterday for the media day, and Mike had said, yeah, Khepri and Gab are like some of the most fun characters in the game because of how you can grief the enemy jungler. And I was thinking to myself at the time, man, what is Mike talking about? How's he griefing the jungler? That right there is how you're griefing the jungler. That is a heavy commitment from Sarpe, who finds the frame-perfect ultimate, lands it just ideally, gets the immediate auto attack cancel afterward, chases out, forces the beads off a Streak Up, lands the dash anyway, and you're thinking to yourself, that's a lot of work that you just had to put in to finally hit pay dirt, to finally hit kill Bedrock. And then you just have a Khepri show up. Rotwin's like, hey, psych, try again later. Scarab's Blessing completely resets the neutral game, and 6.5 minutes in, in spite of all the attempts, we're still sitting 0-0 waiting for that first blood.
But the dash onto Rotwin, no Scarab's Blessing to save himself this time, and a Dharmic Pillar thrown off to the side. Rotwin can instead pull Ollie back just to get a little bit of damage back on him, but Rotwin might want to be careful. Luckily for him, he's got some backup, and Ice making the rotation over, but kind of a whiff Dharmic Pillars there by Ollie.
Ollie mega inted that. There's no other way to say it. I mean, you got to think, where is the Mercury throwing this guy? Probably towards your teammates. And he throws the Dharmic Pillar in the exact opposite direction. And I understand what the play attempt is there. He probably wants to throw the pillar line right on top of that third ability from Mercury so that you're holding him inside of the electric fence, essentially. You don't have to do that. You could just spawn the cage around whoever you're throwing, around Rotwin, and he's at least going to have to take one tick. He's at least going to have to get slowed and lose some defense at least once, even if he is using that abduct to get out of range. And instead, Ollie essentially makes the only play that gets Rotwin out of there alive.
Yeah, Rotwin did have the dash up, or maybe he didn't quite have it up ready in time, and then by the time that the cage goes through and he finds a hole out, Rotwin ends up getting the dash to put a little bit of pressure back on Ollie afterwards. But still sitting at the 0-0, I did notice at least about a 500-600 gold lead in favor of the Styx Ferryman, and a lot of that off the back of how many invades that Ice has made. While all this fighting has been happening, while this Mercury for Sarpe has been making rotations and trying to get ganks and trying to get kills, Ice has just been farming.
And that's been going well for him, but in spite of all that, Sarpe is actually the one who's benefiting from a slight level lead. Ice struggling to find his own farm. Continually, Ollie connects a good silence and a knock-up. Spudio puts the damage out, and Tori joins the fight.
Tori gonna dash himself in, but he's not gonna find the root. Darkest of Nights used, but not gonna find anything else. 4 people in this left side jungle. Streaka does have the jump to get away. The cage drops as well as the Suns, but once again, Rotwin comes through. Major looking to Sonic Boom after. Not gonna be enough to close out the gap, but once again, Rotwin just stops the fight on a dime.
Sarpe very nearly turns that around as Azriel might have got a turn on him here. Forces the lead, but Kha'Zix whiffs both abilities immediately afterward. Azriel will likely just be full HP after he hits this wave. Watch it, Bancroft plus Devour Souls puts in a whole lot of work, so Kha'Zix may have been close to finding his kill, and is the operative word. Azriel back to full strength.
Yeah, that's just gross. That's the only way I can describe when your Hades goes from 10% health to 75 with a single combo of abilities up against a wave. And now with that Bumba's Dagger online, Azriel does have a little bit of extra clear when it comes to his blue buff, so we know that both of these mages will go towards that Bumba's Hammer. Rotwin spotted out in the jungle, but not much more to be had from there. Scarab's Blessing still down for a little while, but Streak Up, after that last engagement, did manage to get his beads back online, so should be safe for the next fight.
Should be. Feels like it's been a while since we've taken a peek towards mid, and it's wild considering Gunter has just pulled himself a 2-level lead over Itori, who has been rotating to the majority of this team fights. Feels like every time the Wargs start something up, Itori is just jumping into somebody's shadow, but getting that active this early and sacrificing this much of the neutral farm is costly. You're already 2 or so some odd levels behind against a mage that is already late game slanted. This Baba Yaga loves the ability to just free farm in this lane and stack up this Warlock, start looking towards this Spear of Desolation, get some of that CDR available to you. If the Styx Ferryman were concerned about their ability to get to that late game or even the mid-game team fight, that concern has been alleviated by just the pacing of the last 10 minutes. The Nifleheim Wargs, on the other hand, even though they have got significant scaling options, Spadio, Sarpe, Itori, all incredibly strong in the late game, even Ollie to a certain extent, with that Dharmic Pillar will never really fall off. That ultimate's so valuable in the team fight as well as the objective fight. You'd probably want to get involved a little sooner.
hi-rez going to dash away from Sarpe, who as well has picked himself up a 2-level lead in the jungle. Rotwin spotted out and taking a bit of poke from Itori and from Ollie. Kha'Zix and Azrael have rotated over. Azrael does use his ultimate to hold Ollie in place. It's 4 surrounding 1. Ollie gonna go down. Finally, first blood comes out at 10.5 minutes. Gunter the one to grab that one.
Can the Styx Ferryman do anything with that first blood? We're over 10 minutes in, so the Pyromancer is up and available, but it is a heavy commitment from the Styx Ferryman. 3 ultimates down. You're not exactly the best at shredding Pyromancer with the abilities there or the people that were there. Maybe hi-rez to a certain extent could have been the DPS, but the Nifleheim Wargs were relatively healthy outside of the one man who falls down, so Pyromancer not essentially an option. That's another fight where it's the Nifleheim Wargs trying to start up a proactive play. It's an ultimate in from Sarpe that is not quite on the mark. Ollie starts to step up, trying to finish off some of these kills or at least isolate individual targets. But the Wargs overextend, and an early rotation from B. Azrael is the difference maker there. And that's a rotation that is allowed to the Styx Ferryman because Azrael's been getting the better end of the soul lane for the last 12 or so minutes. He hasn't really been under pressure. He's been continually pushing these waves into the tower, nearly even finishing off this tower now. Kha'Zix really would benefit from fights happening anywhere else on the map. You don't really want to fight if you're the Nifleheim Wargs near the soul lane because Azrael's going to get there first every single time.
With that, first blood at the very least going to the Ferryman. They were able to pick themselves up a small lead, but the Wargs have already alleviated most of that gold disparity that came from there, down to only 200 gold. And in fact, experience is currently favoring the Nifleheim Wargs. We saw that Sarpe has been able to hold a lead over in the jungle. Even in the dual lane, Spadio has been able to hold at least a 1-level lead up over Streak Up. And even despite the fact that Kha'Zix has been under a lot of pressure in the soul lane, he's at least able to keep himself on pace or even slightly ahead of Azrael.
Yeah, farm's been good for the Nifleheim Wargs. They've been playing a very slow pace throughout the early. And when they are going for these invades, when they are going for these proactive plays, if they are forced to fall back, they'll generally take a little bit of the neutral farm on the way. Keep your eyes on Sarpe. Ultimate no good. Leaped out by Streak Up.
Streak Up going to go right back to Rotwin, but Ollie drops the cage and the Suns fall down from Streak Up. And that will be the end of the engagement right there. But that's 3 ults for just Streak Ups. Did manage to get the beads and the shell out of it, though.
And that's pretty valuable, I suppose. The Styx Ferryman should have come out ahead on that exchange. Take a peek at the build difference between these junglers. You'd expect Mercury to be the one looking towards Rage, but it's hi-rez.
Rotwin gonna find out Ollie, pull him right back in, and the home sweet home comes out of Gunter. The firebolts are going to be enough damage to find another kill for the mid laner of the Styx Ferryman, but Itori rotates over to the solo. A greedy play by B. Azrael to try and proxy farm, ends up costing him his life.
It does. Gotta be aware of that global presence that Itori has got. Not that he had to use it there, just able to walk over. But had Itori been anywhere else on the map, you're jumping into a shadow, which means you have to play carefully around these proxy-style plays. Azrael just not playing with the caution required. The Styx Ferryman will heat check the Gold Fury. Spadio, I suppose, spots them out, so it's a reset by the Chaos team. Nifleheim Wargs, they're finding their pace in the mid-game. It's a dead even match, but considering the pacing of the early and how much it had favored the Styx Ferryman for the first 8 or so minutes, this is a great pace for the Warg.
That's a rotation from Itori with that global ultimate to find Streak Up, and Streak Up won't be able to find a way out of here. The Nifleheim Wargs will put their second kill up on the board, this time on the back of Spadio.
Can they do anything with this pressure? 30 seconds left on Streak Up's respawn. Both of your hunters are on the Gold Fury side of the map. You've got a Mercury who's already finished up some crit. You just gotta think one of these objectives is possible at this point. Gold Fury, Pyromancer, push a tower, something while you've got all this time. where it's a numbers advantage over to the Nifleheim Wargs. Two members do check the Gold Fury, but it's just for the Oracles. No presence as of yet. But even looking at the build pass of the Styx Ferryman, it's not as if there's a spectral armor just yet. It's not as if these are tanky targets, and you've already got a good deal of crit on the Wargs. I'd love to see them get active.
Sarpé will eat some good damage from Gunter and Ice Ice, respectively. Sarpé will be able to dash himself back out. Mid camps do go the way of the Styx Ferryman, so they're going to be able to get themselves a little bit of that extra neutral farm. Sarpé working on now his second crit item, the Wind Demon finished, and Deathbringer will be shortly after. Well, I say shortly, but it is a fairly costly item in order to pick up.
Yeah, about 3,000 total, but we're approaching that pace, I think. Sarpé has got a good deal of gold in hand as of now, so short sword finished up. Won't be too much longer until that Deathbringer is finished. On the other side, Ice Ice going down that katana tree. Could be a stone cutting, which has seen a resurgence recently, stripping away protections from your target and making you tankier at the exact same time. Think of it as like a double selfish executioner, but it just makes you stronger. Every time you land your autos, it's Sarpé off the mark again, but will force the beads.
Beads and the Darkest of Night, this time out of Spudio. So Streak Up once again going to be down a relic, and this has just been the name of the game for Sarpé, has been rotate over to Duo, see what Streak Up's up to, throw out an ultimate, see if you can either get the beads out of him or maybe an ult or two, and this time does get the beads at the very least, so it's going to be at least worth his trouble walking over to that lane.
Yeah, that's not a Sarpé play. That's a Merc play. Merc players are going to be doing that every single time. He's one of the few junglers that could just pass through lane and still gank you. It's the, hey, I'm right in front of you, but you can't see me because of the fog of war, and it's pretty easy to line up your shot from there. So expect Sarpé to be doing that continually, and even if Streak Up's able to avoid the ultimate, just the gap close of Sonic Boom has proven valuable time and time again. What is that, beads 3 times in a row? As long as you're connecting that dash, you're setting up for Spudio very, very well.
Rotation by Itori over towards Rotwin, who is trying to steal some offerings. Now surrounded Dharmic Pillars to keep Ice Ice and Streak Up. Rotwin will get the ultimate off, but not going to get much more than that. He will go down shortly after Itori, credited to the kill, and great placement of the ult by Ollie.
Styx Ferryman are just not putting any respect to this global presence. Itori rotates in yet again. Rotwin shows himself deep in the enemy jungle alone, stripping away some of those offerings. So the Nifleheim Wargs have a pretty simple response to that play as Sarpé makes his rotation yet again. Ultimate not back up just yet, but should be coming up shortly. And he's ready. Streak Up shows himself in the lane. He's going to have a Sonic Boom in his chest. But purple buff spawning up, and Streak Up, having seen this play upwards of 5 or 6 times now, probably realizes this is coming.
Sarpé will sit pretty far back off to the side of the lane. See if Streak Up will walk out of that tower, but I think Streak Up's a little bit wiser than this at this point. He's been ganked, what, like you said, 4 or 5 times by Sarpé on this Mercury. He's seen this play too many times. So will at least go back towards the purple. Rotation in by Spudio, gets the lead from Streak Up. Ice Ice is going to go in, gets the beads with just slice nice Sonic Boom into the backline, finds Streak Up. But Rotwin and Gunter are here for backup, and it's still the 1v1 in the backline. And Ice Ice is losing because of the minions. Spudio low, and Itori has made his rotation in. Streak Up to the sky and crashes back down. With all that fighting, no one will go down.
I cannot believe Sarpé survives that engagement. It's a great ultimate from Ollie to separate the fight at least a little bit, but that is a fully channeled abduct by Rotwin onto Sarpé when he's surrounded by Streak Up and Gunter, Baba Yaga and a Ho Yi.
Oh, no.
You gotta think that's gonna net a kill, and it might eventually, now that Azrael's made the rotation.
Azrael will find the silence and the slow. Ice Ice needs one more auto to finish the job, but will not find it with that one, won't find it with that one. But does manage to at least get the credit for the kill at the end of the day. Ties up the score 3-3.
It does, and now 40 seconds left on Sarpé's respawn. The Styx Ferryman are all incredibly healthy. Gunter's the only one without any ultimate down. Relics available. The majority of beads and Aegis is up for the Styx Ferryman. Pyromancer. I feel like I've been begging for objectives all game.
No, I think you're right to do so.
But I just gotta think there's something they could do on the map for the next now 20 seconds. That Sarpé is still dead. 4-man presence on the right side of the map. Seems like the Styx Ferryman are trying to posture towards the Pyro.
Maybe so. Trebuchet in the mid lane seems that might at least delay that potential Pyromancer for a little while. Rotwin and Ice Ice will make sure to deal with that. And Sarpé is now back off of respawn. So that 40-second window now has nothing left to it. Trebuchet will go down in mid. Pyromancer still standing. Gold Fury still standing. I think you're right to bring up the fact that we are 19 minutes in the game, Mifflin, and not a single objective has even been looked at yet.
So that means that the further we get into the game, the more value there's going to be on the first objective pulled. And it's the Nifleheim Wargs who show up first, showing just how quickly these could have fallen down. Azriel tries his best to steal it away. A blink forward, no good. We'll be able to use that dash to find some safety in his own backline. But considering how quickly that Pyromancer falls, you got to think it could have happened a little bit sooner, especially with less risk on the map. But the Nifleheim Wargs, as we approach that 20-minute mark, say, hey, we finally have some of that crit available. Shadow Steel's finished for Itori. Sarpei's got the Deathbringer, and we can start looking at these objectives. That was, what, 3, maybe 4 seconds with the Pyromancer? Gold Fury's got more HP, but not much more. It'll burn pretty quick.
Well, looks like all we had to do was tell them to go for objectives, and they will. Gold Fury falling low, but one tick of the sun, from what it seems, was enough to steal that one away. The Styx Ferryman get the Gold Fury, stealing that one from under the nose of the Nifleheim Wargs, and that 3K gold lead that the Wargs had just built up has been halved right away.
It has. So not much of a gold, but experience advantage certainly there as Ollie overextends a fair bit, forced to use the Entangling Wings and his ultimate as the cavalry finally does arrive, and Rotwin is just not moving.
Rotwin is slowed to all hell, body blocked by Ollie and brought down by Itori. Another rotation from the mid lane Chernobog. 3-0-1 for Itori to get this game going. And 20.5 minutes in, we finally got the Pyromancer taken down, a Gold Fury down, and now a Tier 1 tower in both the left and the right lanes.
Could potentially look towards the Tier 2 here as well. Double Hunter composition, no defense presence from the Styx Ferryman, only 3 here. Rotwin dead for 10. This should fall. Styx Ferryman, they just want to slow down this play.
Sarpei holding on to that ultimate, using it more so as a bait for the Ferryman to dare them to walk forward to try and defend that Tier 2 tower. So Nifleheim Wargs able to pick up a lot of that gold that they had just lost from the Gold Fury. They'll rotate through the jungle just to clean up anything that is still standing. And now we're back up to a 2,400 gold lead, at least for the Nifleheim Wargs.
It's not the most gold 21 minutes in, but now enough to find some separation in the map, level up some of these relics, get a Tier 1 item, even some wards in pocket to make it easier to look at this Fire Giant. And Fire Giant will burn pretty quickly itself. Again, it's just a very heavy crit composition from the Nifleheim Wargs. Sarpei, Itori, and Spudio going down that build path should hurt them in the team fight once Spectral Armor starts to get finished up by various members of the Styx Ferryman. Each of these builds are going to be mitigated in efficacy, but Fire Giant can't buy that. It can't get anti-crit, which means that it will fall very quickly. The Styx Ferrymen need to play aware of the Nifleheim Wargs' ability to just strip objectives incredibly quickly.
Bumba's Hammer finished up by Kha'Zix. Now the Leather Cowl has been fully upgraded for the mid laner Itori. I thought maybe he was just going to go for a full Deathbringer on back, considering he had nearly 3K in pocket when he did so. Darkest of Nights to use, because Streakup's in danger. Both relics have been burned away. Another rotation from Itori will get those relics away from Streakup, and now with Rotwin rotating over, it means that Streakup will be able to get out of the fight for now. Spudio and Itori now surrounded by 4. Ice Ice goes in, but is being crit instantly as soon as he walks in. The shield and the ultimate have been expended. Spudio used the beats to try and fight back through, but there's not much fighting left that can be had for the Hunter.
But Itori will be able to make his way out of that engagement. Ollie shows some presence, and that should spell the end of the fight for the Styx Ferryman. But that is a great pick onto Spudio. 50 seconds on the respawn.
Sonic Boom gets the ult out of Azriel, and he's taking a lot of damage from it. Will be tried to be pulled back in the coffin, but still had that dash available afterwards to get himself out. So 2 ults expended to try and get Azriel, but only going to get his ult out of it.
The Styx Ferryman would love to make a play right now, try and find something to close up these gaps. A Tier 1 tower could go a long way in mid, especially considering how that acts as a bastion of safety, not only for the fire, but also for subsequent Gold Furies. But 50 seconds on Spudio's respawn, now 20. Not much to be done for the Styx Ferryman.
Azriel will get a little bit of healing back from Sarpei, who finds a dash up against Ice Ice. Speeds are gone from the Nemesis. Dash is gone from Azriel. The Mage Look is good from Sarpei to get some damage. Azriel's going to heal some of that back up. Dark Pillars will get the beads out of the Hades. And then the ultimate from Rotwin will guarantee that Azriel has an escape path out.
Sarpei's got eyes for Gunter, and he's stripped away the beads on his own. It's an ultimate from Gunter in response. Just tossing out as much damage as he can. The Nifleheim Wargs have stripped away a lot of valuable resources from the Styx Ferryman. Namely, Scarab's Blessing might just be enough of it on its own. The Nifleheim Wargs will feel confident to start a fight, or at least force an engagement around this fire.
Spudio is back up, and the Fire Giant is going down very quickly thanks to the triple crit that's coming from these carries. Kaz is going to try and pull Rotwin into the coffin to hold him back. The Nifleheim Wargs will find the Fire Giant. Rotwin finds a path out, but there's no safety for him to come back through. Itori goes up in the sky and crashes himself right back down And it's a disengage after the objective from the Wargs.
Man, Itori using that ultimate very intelligently there. Just, hey, this is where everybody is in the Ferryman, and they're all slow. Let's get out of here. Like bandits in the night. We got our Fire Giant. That's all we need. Now we can start talking about that siege potential. And the siege potential is incredibly high for the Nifleheim Wargs. Double Hunter composition means as quickly as these neutral objectives have fallen, so will the permanent objectives. Tier 1, Tier 2, Phoenix is all very susceptible to this composition from the Nifleheim Wargs. They've got great space control thanks to Ollie. Dharmic Pillars just tossed out in the middle of a Tier 2 where Phoenix will force the Styx Ferryman to respect this siege attempt, will force them to respect the space control of the Nifleheim Wargs, and if the fight goes long, you're already benefiting from the healing of Fire Giant, but simultaneously we'll be benefiting from the healing of Kha'Zix as well. Nifleheim Wargs in a very good position from here. Semi-non-standard mage from the Styx Ferryman will struggle to keep these minion waves out of these objectives as well. Gunter really wants to hold on to those cooldowns for poke, not exactly very great at just locking down space.
Sarpei holding on to the Sonic Boom. Not going to throw it out yet. Instead, it's just the Dharmic Pillar, but in the back line, it's Azrael holding out 4 of the Nifleheim Wargs for now, but he gets pulled back into the coffin, and before he can even find a dash path out, he is gone, but Ollie had traded his life along with it, and Spudio falling low from the damage out of Gunter. The Tier 2 defense from the Ferryman is good to at least get 1, and maybe force the Wargs completely back.
Great stun onto Itori, but no follow-up this time around. Should spell the end of this engagement. A 1-for-1 trade. Ollie dives a little bit too deep, and Azrael separates the fight masterfully, locking down 3 members of the Nifleheim Wargs. Had Ollie had help from even 1 or maybe 2 of those members, that fight would go handily over to the Wargs. So big ups to Azrael. Although he is the only one to fall, he makes the play to keep the game alive for the Styx Ferryman.
That will delay some time. The Fire Giant's still going to be around the waist of the Wargs for at least another couple of minutes. So they have some time to utilize it. They'll start by going for an Oni Fury at the very least. So even though their Tier 2 wasn't as successful, they can still get something on the map. 2 towers left standing before all 3 Phoenixes have been exposed. But it seems that the Nifleheim Wargs are content with getting a push up on the left-hand side for now. But Sarpei will go back to base and spend up some of the golden pocket for this team.
A little bit over a minute left on this Fire Giant power play. Only 2 Tier 2 towers still standing for the Styx Ferryman, and Ollie's already rejoined the map, rejoined the realm of the living. Should be a continued attempt on this Tier 2 in mid, this time with some additional knowledge. You got the death run. You know exactly what went wrong last time. Don't let it happen again.
Sarpei's been spotted in the backline. Pillars have bbeen dropped by Ollie. Spudio's been dropped to about 10% HP, but the Tier 2 tower is gone nonetheless. And the Nifleheim Wargs can take their prize and find their way out. Kha'Zix does get pulled back in, ulted by the Nem, and blown up instantly. The solo laner for the Nifleheim Wargs is now gone. And the Styx Ferrymen are continuing their charge forward. Spudio had to go back to base. Ollie stunned out, slowed down, and will be beaten away. Ice finds the double kill in the fight.
Just not the cleanest disengage you've ever seen. The Nifleheim Wargs, essentially every man for himself their way out of that engagement. And if you do that, every man's going to die on their own. Ollie and Kha'Zix, left to their own devices, die by themselves. The Styx Ferryman, great reinitiation to find some value on the tail end of that. Will take out the Tier 1 and 2 in mid, exposing the first bird of the Nifleheim Wargs. If another team fight ends similarly, you gotta think the Styx Ferryman have exposed a win condition in that same breath. Fire Giant will be spawning in a little bit over a minute from here. So, the Nifleheim Wargs will likely not have much left in the tank to push out. It's back down to a neutral state, and considering Fire Giant and the original team fight around the Fire Giant had gone handily to the Wargs. After the power play, only 2,000 gold separating these 2 teams. Less now, the towers have been traded out. The Styx Ferryman still in a very good position. I dare to say it is a dead even game.
Yeah, I think as we're getting close to this 30-minute mark, enhanced Fire Giant on the mind of both of these teams, and it very well could at least delay out this Fire Giant for a little while longer. It won't spawn back in until almost the 29-minute mark, so 60 seconds to wait around for a team fight. Winning team, if they have enough healthy members and still enough alive on the opposite side, could just be a free enhanced Fire Giant, or could potentially be the playmaking end, considering only 2 towers are left standing for the Wargs. Styx Ferrymen don't have any left on their side of the map. The Styx Ferrymen are the first team to start getting some pressure and some ward coverage around this Fire Giant. Meanwhile, Kha'Zix goes up into the coffin on the left side, chased out. Azrael with his own ultimate. Kha'Zix doesn't go down quite yet, and Ice's going to eat a couple of crits, heal some of that back up. But Gunter, with his own ultimate, going to fire some damage up against the Wargs.
Entangling wings from Ollie to disengage the fight, but looking at the ultimate cooldowns, it's an even trade. Rotwin holds on to his, as does Streak Up. On the other side, Sarpei and the Itori have got their ultimates available, but the Styx Ferryman have still established the defensive positioning, and they're pulling out the Fire Giant immediately.
Leo is here, but doesn't have his ultimate. Needs a lot from that potion toss out of Gunter, but Itori is here, Kha'Zix is here as well off of the return. But that Fire Giant is gone. Ultimate in the back by the way, Sarpe. He's trying to steal this one away, and he will do so all by himself. Now, the re-engage by the Nifleheim Wargs. Ollie does not have his ultimate for a little while longer. And with that slow thrown out from Gunter, will at least keep the Nifleheim Wargs back. And a stray ricochet, at least from Streak Up. Not going to find anything. But the Nifleheim Wargs and Sarpe able to steal that fire away.
Hero play from Sarpe keeps the game in the hands of the Nifleheim Wargs. Fire Giant on all 5 members, and it looked to me like that was Golden Blade splash damage that stole away the Fire Giant. He was targeting out Gunter, and, well, does at least force the Scarab's Blessing, and luckily takes away the objective as well. The Nifleheim Wargs, 4 stacked in mid, will have Sarpe hovering in the jungle. No ultimate available, so he's going to have to walk up the old-fashioned way. Styx Ferryman, similarly, got the 4-1 split with their jungler off to the side. But now as both teams approach 5, it's all about play on field. We've seen how this gone down around the Tier 2 tower. Styx Ferryman defense is not weak.
Kha'Zix ult up, Ollie's ult up, and Ollie's ult now dropped down to keep Rotwin and Streak Up a little bit further in the fight, but
poor ult.
Nothing gained from that Dharmic Pillar. It's just thrown out, and Rotwin was more than capable of, or more than happy with just sitting inside.
Yeah, strange Dharmic Pillar. Doesn't really lock down any priority targets, doesn't separate the Phoenix. Maybe it's the triple root from Rotwin that really forces the Nifleheim Wargs to rethink that initiation. Maybe Ollie was just not on the same note as the rest of his team, but we've been seeing a couple curious ultimates here as we get a look back at how Sarpe did play around this Fire Giant. I hypothesized that it was the splash damage, but it seems I was incorrect. My man just did it all himself and then immediately disengages. Should probably at least die for that, right? But instead, safe play. Safe, easy play for the Nifleheim Wargs.
And Styx Ferryman taking a look at just the player damage chart itself. You can see that Gunter on this Baba Yaga. We're talking about the early game of how Baba doesn't really have a whole lot of damage, doesn't really get a whole lot online, but as we're now 6 slotted into the game, now officially in that deeper portion of the late game where these mages do have all 6 of their items, we can see just how much damage Gunter is able to do for his team. While it hasn't been able to fully translate into wins just yet, we did see that Tier 2 defense earlier on from the Styx Ferryman, able to find great success, and even still, right now, the Styx Ferryman are holding the Nifleheim Wargs back and away from their base.
And I think it's a byproduct of the builds. The Nifleheim Wargs have gone for a triple crit composition. 3 of their carries all building down that crit tree. So the Spectral Armors, which have now been finished up by the majority of the front line for the Styx Ferryman. You've got it done for Beazriel. Rotwin just finished his up as well. Means that once the front line initiates, what used to be a massive threat on the front line just no longer is. Crit has seen blanket nerfs throughout the last couple of patches, and Spectral has been buffed in turn, meaning that of your 3 carries running crit, not really a whole lot of damage coming out from them onto the front line of the Styx Ferryman.
Especially with Azrael going for Alona's Mask final item, plus that Spectral Armor, so his crit's going to be even less. And speaking of Azrael, into the backline, finds 3 with the ult, but all 3 of them are able to find a path out with their own dashes. And that Phoenix took a lot of damage, down to about half HP, and slowly regenerating itself back up. Junglers still sitting over in the mid lane by themselves.
Yeah, Azrael losing out on that ultimate is a major loss for the Styx Ferryman. That has been the separating tool in the majority of these team fights, but that's not to say that he's without assets. He could still find those 2-man fears, or 2-second fears rather, or still initiate like this.
Gonna go in. Heal comes out from Kha'Zix. Ollie falling low. Phoenix has not gone down just yet. The coffin will pull Azrael in, but it's not enough damage to find a kill on the Hades. Ollie finds a way out. Ricochet, not quite enough. And Gunter's firebolts will make sure to at least zone away the Nifleheim Wargs. And once again, the Ferryman able to hold out at another structure.
Ice handily taking the 1v1 up against Sarpe. Spectral Armor finish for this Nemesis as well means that Sarpe is just not as effective in the 1v1, despite having a lifesteal advantage. In spite of already finishing up that starter item, Ice just winning out. And that's not going to change anytime soon. If we see Sarpe commit the dash on the Nemesis, all of a sudden that shield becomes so much more valuable. That's a 1v1 that is likely going to favor Nemesis for the rest of this match, just thanks to these builds. And it's not as if Ice is itemized directly to deal with Sarpe. That Spectral Armor, just like the rest of the front line for the Styx Ferryman, is going to find value against any singular one of the carries, the Nifleheim Wargs. Itori, Spudio, Sarpe, all mitigated in effectiveness, which is generally at the SPL level. We see different styles of builds between your hunters. If one's going down that crit tree, you might see a straight crit item in a build, but it won't be a couple of items. Not everybody's looking at that Deathbringer. It's, all right, well, maybe I'll get an Atalanta's just because I want some lifesteal, and then otherwise I'll go down the Silver Branch kin-size tree. And that way, it at least limits the effectiveness of this anti-crit itemization, but we've seen it now. The Styx Ferryman rampant with defense. The Nifleheim Wargs struggling to find these kills.
I mean, the only difference between Itori and Spudio's build is just the one item in that fourth slot. Instead of a Wind Demon that Spudio picked up, Itori has that Shadow Steel to deal with a little bit of the healing that comes from the way of the Styx Ferryman, who have now established their pressure around the Fire Giant. Ward in the pit in favor of the Styx Ferryman. The Nifleheim Wargs are grouping back up. Last time around, Sarpé was able to find an ult in the backline to steal that one away, but now we're looking at an enhanced Fire Giant. I'm not sure that the Ferrymen are willing to pull that one with all 5 of the Wargs standing by.
So it's all the Nifleheim Wargs establishing the defensive positioning. Sarpé has put pressure towards mid. If he stays here, it could force one member of the Styx Ferryman back to base to defend that Phoenix. Instead, he has made his rotation over towards the fire. The Nifleheim Wargs are the proactive element. They've pulled it out, dropped it down to 50%, and reset. The Styx Ferryman slow playing the siege.
Sarpé beads gone from the ultimate out of Azrael. Fire Giant healing itself back up after being pulled by the triple crit from the Wargs. So the Wargs are happy to make that kind of a pull just because of the nature of their triple crit. The Styx Ferrymen are at least quick to respond. Sarpé spotted out. The dash gets caught by the silence, but not much more beyond there. Darkest of Nights, thought that was used for a moment there, but no, it was not. Spudio holding on to the ultimate. Only one who doesn't have an ult is Azrael, and now that Bracer about to come back online. So as far as Relic roundup, Sarpé is going to be the only one at a disadvantage in the fight.
So Sarpé is the only one with a target on his back. Azrael's ultimate already 50% back to full, so should have that by the time the fight actually starts up. The Nifleheim Wargs showing a little bit of presence, but will allow the Pyromancer to go down. The Styx Ferrymen take that for themselves. Sarpé, realizing that he's not as effective in the fight without his beads, will decide to dedicate his time to split pushing and trying to separate the Styx Ferrymen from each other, create a scenario where it's a 4-on-4 engagement around the Fire Giant pit. Unfortunately for Sarpé, the one man who does split off from the Styx Ferryman to stop that siege is Ice-Ice. And Ice-Ice wins that 1v1.
Azrael once again catches another dash, but it's just Ollie. Dark Pillar used. Ollie dropped down to about 40% HP and even lower, falling quickly. Azrael continues his engagement, but a good heal from Kha'Zix will make sure that Azrael backs away for now. But the Styx Ferryman still with advantage. Itori goes up in the sky, dashes over to the left side of the fight where he catches out Ice-Ice, but Ice-Ice has the double dash to find a way out. The Ferryman pull the enhanced Fire Giant. Sarpé charging up that ultimate on the left side of the jungle. Not going to pull the trigger just yet as Azrael gets away from the fire, finds another silence against Kha'Zix.
No leap available, but Azrael still makes his way out without taking too much damage. Rotwin, on the other hand, has taken a fair deal as Sarpé gets involved.
Does find a Sonic Boom in the back, but it's just against a Rotwin who's going to be fine. Gunter turns that one around with the ultimate. Sarpé is gone. Spudio blasting crits up against Ice-Ice, but Gunter finds a double kill, and Itori finds one. It's a 2-for-1 to start this out, but it might just be a third as Kha'Zix is stuck around just a little too long, and Streak Up finding the kill.
Ollie's got nothing left in the tank. No ultimate, no relics, just a dash to buy himself some time. Ultimate finally back up, but not in time to save himself. Streak Up credit for the double, and the Styx Ferryman take the team fight cleanly. It's all up to Itori to defend his own base. He's a hunter, he's got crit, but 1 versus 4, he's not got a great chance.
Yeah, that's a tall task, and now that Azrael is back to full HP, he can gladly tank up this Phoenix while Gunter plays zone duty up against Itorian. Well, not just zone duty, might just be able to kill him a little bit off the mark with that magic right after, but now with the minion wave walking in, the Styx Ferrymen can start their assault on the Titan. It's going to be a big defense from Itori. Needs to buy as much time as possible, get as many crits as he can. Titan down to half HP. Azrael goes in, the Aegis away from Itori. He's got to turn around. He can still hold this defense a little while longer. Pulled back by Rotwin, taken down. And it's a 1-for-1. Sarpé has found his way back in the fight, but the Titan is not going to have enough HP. The Styx Ferrymen, after being behind for pretty much the entire game, are the ones who come out on top.
Itori keeps it at least a little bit interesting towards the end of that one. I thought maybe for a moment the respawns were coming through. We could be looking at a reset. The Titan was low though, and the game state advantage would have been favoring the other side the entire time. But you're right to say, what a comeback story for this team. The Nifleheim Wargs looking good.
Nifleheim Wargs able to hold very early pressure throughout the game. We see Sarpé making rotation after rotation to that dual lane, trying to make sure that streak up doesn't get to have a fun time in the dual lane, constantly using those sonic booms, getting the Scarab's blessings out of Rotwin. But even with all that early pressure, it comes down to the late game team fights, and that one, and game one, will go over to the Styx Ferryman. We'll come back after a brief break. We'll get you set up for game two.
Of the universe inside of me, help me beat the shit out of my ego, please. Embrace the sunrise and the sunset and the time between them. Let us stay forever young and never die.
To the Smite Challenger Circuit, the Styx Ferryman able to find a win in game number one against the Nifleheim Wargs, even despite the fact that the Nifleheim Wargs were able to find consistent pressure, consistent early poke up against the Styx Ferryman. It came down to the late game team fights, these siege defenses, these fire giant dances. Those ones go in favor of the Styx Ferryman, and they're able to find themselves the win in game number one. It's J-Mac. I got Mifflin here to help me break down game one and get you guys set for game number two.
Man, look, man, I'm having a rough day. Maybe you'd be better off on your own, but I'll try my best to carry my own weight.
Please, I need some
for
help,
the
man.
rest of this Styx segment.
I need another coffee.
Look, I think that it really is just build diff, man. You can't be going triple crit with how strong Spectral Armor is. That just cannot be the case, because once the front line was able to survive 2 or 3 auto attacks from these guys, and it was more than that, because really Spectral Armor is just so good right now. It makes it so difficult to find the opportunity to finish off some of these kills. The Nifleheim Wargs saw that difficulty throughout the entirety of the early game, thanks to Rotwin. A couple of miraculous Scarab's blessings, as well as just great rotations. We're able to slow down the early from the Nifleheim Wargs. But once those builds were finished up, once it was a triple crit just style of build on this composition, it just felt like all the momentum was immediately lost. Except for the objectives, which finally did get started up at the 20-minute mark, and the Nifleheim Wargs were coming out ahead on those. But as far as team fights were concerned, the Styx Ferryman just won out on builds, and it's not often I get to say that.
No, definitely not. Especially when you're looking at, triple crit, you think, oh, this is pretty good. But as you highlighted, spectral armor, a lot better now. The extra damage you get from these Deathbringers has been nerfed a little bit. And one thing that didn't really get mitigated much was the damage that Gunter was able to put out. 37k, I believe I saw, to his name on your traditional mid lane mage. Not mitigated by just about anything on the side of the Nifleheim Wargs. And they're able to close out this first game and bring themselves a victory. 4-0-7 for the mid laner of the Styx Ferryman. Able to get himself a nice win. And we saw a lot of those fights in the early game, but as highlighted at the very start of that highlight reel, Rotwin able to mitigate a lot of that, keep the Styx Ferryman in because of those Scarab's blessings.
Yeah, just great presence from the support. My heart does go out to Itori, who has a phenomenal performance. 24,000 damage put out. 7-1, I believe, was the slash line towards the end of that game, just utilizing that global presence incredibly well to get involved in every single team fight on the map. But you just got to be thinking about the itemization, man. You got to be thinking about how differently that game could have gone. And you got to think about how differently that early game could have been paced out. It feels like both of the teams were both hesitant in their ability to look towards these objectives, to do anything after they find these picks. You find a 1 or 2 for 0, and all of a sudden it's, all right, guys, nobody's on the map. We can get to these waves, and no one's going to stop me. I'm going to put it right in their tower. Maybe go to the Gold Fury. Maybe go to the Pyromancer. Maybe try and leverage some of these early leads to set yourself up for a late game advantage.
I mean, it took us 10.5 minutes to find a first blood, and it took us 19 minutes to find the first objective, which was the Pyromancer, and subsequently right after the Gold Fury. Picks and bans for game number 2, now between the Wargs and the Ferryman. No changes up so far in the bans, at least for the Nifleheim Wargs. They're going to stick with the same ones they went with game number 1, Yu Wong and Yamoja. King Arthur was the call for them last time around. We'll see if that holds true. Maybe we'll see if the Ferryman also take away this Mercury. I mean, Mercury was a bit of a problem in the early game, maybe could be a good asset for their team, but I have a feeling that if those 6 Ferrymen leave that one open, it would get picked up. So they're going to make sure to ban that one away from the Wargs.
So generally, Jingwei is a discussion point for the first pick selection. Chernobog's been very strong recently as well. The Wargs essentially have got the options available to them, and they don't want to deal with anything annoying yet again. It's the Khepri taken for themselves, that early safety net, the second you tick over to level 5, the ability to be that primary initiator in the late game team fight. The fact that Khepri is just a very plug-and-play Guardian. You don't really need to build a draft around this guy. He fits into just about every single team composition that you could hope for. Makes him a pretty strong first pick overall, but taking it this early in your draft does give over to the Styx Ferryman the option to find some counter selections. Executes beat Scarab's Blessing, Achilles comes to mind, Thanatos, even Alquang, all really good at just making sure that whoever that one guy is doesn't actually get revived. Instead, though, it won't be a jungle shift up. Nemesis taken for themselves. It's not exactly burst damage. It is generally single target, which is the forte of Khepri to stop. Got to think that you're going to have less success this time around.
And with that Nemesis, a Heimdall locked in going over the Chernobog, which in most other games and most other regions, especially over in the SPL level, would be maybe criminal with how popular Chernobog has been with the level of success. But it will be picked up alongside Baba Yaga, so we are having to see kind of a force change up in the Styx Ferryman's roster, not because of any of the bans that have come through, but just because of what the Nifleheim Wargs have been able to pick up for themselves.
Another curious selection for the Styx Ferryman, Merlin, taken in that third slot. That's a lot of objective damage. That's a lot of ability to just shred in the early game, especially in that fire stance. Not sure if we're going to get to see that in the early game, but it doesn't fall off come late game. And he's got great siege and base defense potential, potentially even some of the best base defense in the game in that arcane stance. So it still certainly fits this draft, but doesn't exactly establish a whole lot of pressure throughout the early game. You're going to see him in the ice stance more often than not, and that stance just does not do a whole lot of damage early on. Osiris, when we see him get locked in, assuming he is going to the soul lane, another god that can hold his own in lane, but doesn't exactly hit the ground running until that Bumba's Hammer is finished up. This is a very, very slow composition from the Styx Ferryman. Again.
But, yeah, that's what we saw from them in game number 1, was 4 or 5 gods that want to get to the late game, and when they got to the late game, that's where they were able to pop off and find those wins. Now, on the opposite side, Kukulkan for the Nifleheim Wargs, as well as Camazotz. With all these auto attacks and crits becoming so popular, Golden Blade, things like that. I mean, Miff, how do you kind of feel about Camazotz in the current meta?
I mean, Camazotz, I think, is a bit meta-resistant in that he just does a lot of damage no matter what. If an ability style build is in the meta, Camazotz for the most part is going to work out. Bat Out of Hell still a great disengage or chase down tool. It removes you from the playfield. I like Camazotz. Blanket statement, I think he fits pretty well. He's got great sustains. We can stay out on the map a little bit longer than the majority of the other junglers. But is he the greatest option right now? No, not exactly.
Maybe not. We'll see if it can work out for the Nifleheim Wargs. Game number 2 between them and the Styx Ferryman now underway. But it will be Ice taking the Nemesis into the jungle once again. So Azrael going to be on a little bit different. Normally the Hades, well, maybe I shouldn't say different. Hades and Osiris kind of both known for some of that early pressure in that lane. And with Azrael going for a Golden Blade, start immediately out, rushing into that 1,000-fold blade. It might take at least a few levels before he's able to get it, but should be able to find some good pressure up against Kha'Zix.
Yeah, I think so. Doesn't really have the ability to sustain throughout the early portion. It's not the Death Toll pickup, as you said. Doesn't really have the most fight potential, and especially against Kha'Zix, who is sustaining so much on Kakalan. Has multiple health potions available to him. The blue buff heals him up as well. Means that the early should struggle. I think that Kakalan's going to get the better end of that, especially around that first transformation in lane. But once Azrael finishes that Golden Blade, once we start to approach that mid to late game, he's going to become very, very difficult to finish off. And looking at the double physical, solo and jungler for the Nifleheim Wargs means that Azrael, once he does finish this Golden Blade, if he so chooses, could just build a Sovereignty and all of a sudden be double dipping on his defense, immediately into a Glad Shield right afterward, which has been the meta recently, or even a Berserkers, will make it very, very difficult to shut him down. In the late game, Itori, it's going to be his job to deal with Azrael, but for now, Azrael can just coast in that lane.
Pull will get the beads from Streak Up. Rodwin trying to body block, but a double root by Spudio. Body blocks by Ollie to try and lock down Streak Up and Rotwin, but not going to be enough. Still just a little too tanky in this early game to find those easy early picks. Sarpé will find some good poke up against Gunter, but Iceye's going to make sure that this wave pressure goes in favor of him and the Styx Ferryman, just to try and keep things even in the mid lane.
Yeah, Sarpé using the entirety of his kit to just poke out, and considering we're early game, level 2, it's not the most poke out there. Sarpé lines up against Ice yet again, but damage is good. Ice in trouble.
Blink by Sarpé to get some body blocks out, but the Blizzard from Gunter will slow down the Nifleheim Wargs. Ollie making a very early rotation over, finds the pull up against Gunter, and gets yet another set of beads. Ollie being very proactive on this Khepri.
He is, but if nothing comes of those beads being burned, that's just a 3-way split in mid. You have to make usage of that rotation. Ollie does the work. He gets the beads off. But you've got 150 seconds to make use. If nothing happens in that time, unfortunately, that's just a bad rotation. So keep your eyes on the Wargs. And Sarpé in particular. He needs to get involved. He needs to punish Gunter for losing that relic this early on.
Ollie will rotate himself back over to Duo. So at the very least, Spudio got a little bit of extra farm to himself. Ollie, because of his rotation to mid, getting some farm at least on the way out, will be able to hit level 3 along with his Hunter. That will give them some pressure up to this Harpy camp. Azrael will be fine over in the solo lane, though it's going to be a fight for the blue buff. Ice is here. No beads available to the Nemesis. Just goes in. The Slice and Dice is enough to confirm that buff. Sarpé dropped to about a quarter HP. Needs a little bit more damage. The shield not reflecting quite enough, but the heal not maybe as big as Sarpé had wanted. A good signal to slow down Sarpé, and one more auto from Ice to close out for first blood.
Sarpé overextending there. Thinks, all right, I'm level 3. Ice is only level 2. Not a problem. I'm just going to steal away this blue buff, and then I'll make away. But a great steal from Ice takes him over to level 3, gets him access to the rest of his kit, and now able to finish off that kill and get first blood for himself. But can he steal away a blue buff himself? Answer is yes. Unfortunately for Kha'Zix, not able to finish that off. Will lose out on a bit of his HP regen, but most importantly for the Kakalan, it's that CDR on blue buff. That is the all-important stat line, and losing out on that early on means that the guy who is likely to bully this lane has lost some of that potential. Azrael as well, getting an early assist for himself, means that he's going to be able to back very shortly, finish off that Golden Blade, has teleport in the first slot, so won't miss out on any of the farm. I think for now, if they so choose, Styx Ferryman could just leave Azrael to his own devices in the solo lane. He's been set up very well.
And can get quite a bit of poke onto Kha'Zix. Azrael wanting to maybe just hit that level 5. Has hit it. I thought for a moment Azrael would dive in on top of Kha'Zix, but now at the D transform, Kha'Zix will have the leap to find a way out, and Azrael will zone as many minions away from his opponent as he can, trying to deny a little bit of that solo lane farm. Not level 5 yet for Kha'Zix, so won't have that ultimate available, at least until this wave should be done.
20 seconds left on the beads window. Gunter very shortly will regain that CC immunity, so early rotation from Ollie to strip away the beads, although incredibly cool and not something we get to see all too often, doesn't really make a huge impact. It was a three-way split in mid that does allow Spudio to solo farm a couple of his waves, but I believe Rotwin was just hovering in the jungle, so Streak Up similarly gets to solo out his own waves. Will put a slight disadvantage over to Aitori, but small differences. Not really the separator in this one just yet. Styx Ferryman, the only difference being that first blood bounty. Slow early pacing, but I'm expecting Ice to pick that up. Now that both Beazriel and Ice have finished up their Golden Blade, that means that you can put a whole lot of pressure on this right side jungle, and blue buff spawning in just a moment, we'll have an opportunity for the Styx Ferryman to throw around their weight. Ice playing with a 1-level lead, and the blue buff is now up.
Asriel on the way as well. It's going to be a 2v1 at the blue that Sarpei probably doesn't want to take. Double slow in by Asriel. Ice will focus on the blue buff. A leap in by Sarpei. He's going to need Bat Out of Hell to find a path out. But once again, the blue buff stolen away. That one will go around the waist of Asriel. Not a successful invade. A lot of pressure coming from the Ferryman early.
Man, Sarpei is a psycho, by the way. Just leaping in there onto the blue buff. Sure, you've got Bat Out of Hell to get you out of those situations, but speaking from experience as a jungler, I'm never making a play that even remotely risks my own life for my soul laner's blue buff. I know that Kha'Zix probably is like, hey man, I really appreciate the attempt. Thank you very much. I didn't get the blue, but I saw that you put in as much effort as you could have, but you gotta think Sarpei would have been better suited just holding on to that ultimate and potentially looking towards a fight or a lane where he's got better opportunity to win out in the engagement. Now that Beazriel has finished up that Golden Blade, has got that Bumba's Dagger available to himself, has got the ability to start building into some physical defense, you might have to cut losses in the soul lane. Have Kha'Zix just farm up and hope that he's able to stay afloat.
Ultimate by Asriel. Gets an ultimate out of Kha'Zix, but that's the safety that Kha'Zix had. He should transform and have a second ultimate to himself. Ice rotates in, finds the slice and dice, but not much more to be gained from there. Just more pressure up on the soul laner of the Wargs. Now a triple split around the mid camp by the Wargs. They've spotted out Rotwin. He's going to juke out some damage. Going to get pulled back in by Ollie, but Gunter is there to get some pressure right back up and try and bail his support out. Leap is available to Rotwin. He'll use it to get away, but Aitori, even this early on, is still getting some good damage up against the opposition.
He is. Warlock Staff, just deceptively a strong item. The baseline stats on Warlocks, having so much power, having penetration on it, means that Aitori, even without stacks, is getting a good deal of value. The Streak Up and Spudio lock eyes for the barest of moments in the lane, and well, only one of them really liked their odds. Spudio goes back into the jungle, tail tucked, and walks through his own towers. The Styx Ferryman ADC is able to establish some of that pressure. Not much on the map for either of these teams to be doing right now. Both teams going for a slightly slow style. I would have expected Nifleheim Wargs to try and leverage early game pressure considering this composition from the Styx Ferryman, but it's a transcendence in the jungle, a transcendence in the dual lane, slow builds, but get a slow game, and that's where we're at.
Another red buff invade, or I should just say another buff invade in general, this time at the red. Stolen away by Ice, who's been making constant pressure and can go for a purple invade too. Ice has just been farming. He has just been stealing away every camp that he's been given the opportunity to do so. That's a red stolen, a purple stolen, and Ice will find a path out. Styx Ferryman with an early 1K gold lead. Some of that off the back of the first blood that came from earlier, but a lot of it just from Ice stealing so much farm away.
Is it build diff again? Is Golden Blade really the separating factor? Like, when you think about these two gods, Camazotz and Nemesis, holistically in the tapestry of Smite, you'd think, yeah, Camazotz more early game at least, has the ability to get involved on the map, has better gank potential, more survivability, means that he can go a little bit deeper on his dives, has the potential to just go down that mace tree, get early power, whereas Nemesis really does have to go down that katana tree, but in picking up Transcendence for himself, Sarpei puts a timer on his efficacy, says, okay, well, once I finish up, what is that, another 20 stacks, I'll be at full strength with this item, and I'll have the full value of an item. Whereas Ice is like, I'll just pick up Golden Blade and run you down all the way across the map. I've got more movement speed, I can clear these camps faster, I'm getting involved earlier, I'm a harder late game scaler. So he's winning the early, and he's got a brighter horizon into the late game. It just seems like the Styx Ferrymen have got a firmer grasp on this new age style of build, the new meta for some of these selections, whereas the Nifleheim Wargs are sticking to their guns for the most part, and those guns are rusty. They need some T&L.
They need a little bit of help, and so does Itori. Does find the leap back into the Tier 1 tower, and that should be enough. Pressure for the Styx Ferryman to start making their way through the jungle. Red buff coming back up, and Ice Ice has already made his path over. Ollie at the front line, Gunter right back behind will be engaged on by Sarpei. Quick flicker out, and ultimate from Ice Ice will get the bat out of hell. Gunter in danger, needs one more hit to take himself out, but the Ice Bolt is good, not good enough. Spudio able to find a kill in the start of this fight, but a leap in by Rotwin doesn't find a stun up against anybody. Instead, it's just Ollie on the tail end with the Hunters over both of them. Streak Up not going to be able to get much. It's just a one-kill pick for the Wargs.
And that's exactly what I was talking about. Kamazotz's ability to just dive in those situations. He survives the fight, but maybe the same can't be said of Spudio, who's dashed aggressively. Targets swapped between the Styx Ferrymen. They're trading off back and forth as a revive keeps Ollie up, and Itori turns it around onto Ice Ice, who chases out too far on his own.
Rotwin going to be okay for now. All of that start up over the chance of a potential red buff invade, a fight around the mid camps. The Nifleheim Wargs able to pick up 2 amongst those, one going to each of their carries, Itori and Spudio. And I thought for a moment that Gunter was going to be out, but Spudio did have good placement of that Crystallized Curse to make sure to keep himself in that fight. Nifleheim Wargs have alleviated a lot of that pressure. Still a very slight gold lead to the Ferryman, but the Wargs able to fight back.
Just before that engagement, it was 2,000 gold, which is sizable at the 10-minute mark. The Styx Ferryman caught out unaware inside the jungle, has a poor disengage from Gunter, who's left alone. Sarpei, even in approaching a 9-6 tower, or 9-5 bonus rather, meaning that these towers hit hard, takes a couple of shots, still walks out alive. Just tough stuff for the Styx Ferryman, who are not in position to chase out that kill, in spite of Sarpei using literally everything to get it, both the ultimate and the leap, to finish off Gunter. Gunter holds on to his beads, though, so is not susceptible to a gank of the same caliber in the coming minutes. 11 minutes in, the Nifleheim Wargs have restabilized and reset themselves back to neutral. It's a dead-even game, dare I say it. And I dare.
You do dare.
I'm daring.
He's dared and he's done. Spudio loses out on his beads off a rotation from Rotwin in the duo lane, so those will be down for another 2.5 minutes, and Streak Up still going to try and keep up that pressure within the jungle, even chasing Spudio so far back as towards his own obelisk. The first obelisk that did spawn in did go the way of the Ferryman, Trebuchet on the left side of the map, which could set up for maybe some early pressure. I say early as we're already approaching 12 minutes into the game. This is no longer the early game. And it took 19 minutes last time before we saw any objective looked at by the team.
And I'm thinking we're looking at a similar pace this time around as well. Maybe even a little bit later, as neither one of these teams is going to have a triple crit composition that can just shred an objective at a moment's notice. So it's all about who's finding the picks and who's finding enough picks that they're feeling confident to look towards these objectives. As the game goes on, some of those stacking items, and I say some, but the majority is what I should have said, for the Nifleheim Wargs are finished up. Transcendence, Warlocks, Transcendence, and Thebes now finished stacking for the Nifleheim Wargs, so significant power spikes have been achieved. Second item finished for Spudio, so he's got that crit chance available for himself. hi-rez for Sarpei, meaning that he's got a whole lot of burst potential as well as some early penetration finished up. Gotta think the Nifleheim Wargs should like their odds in a team fight. Again, looking at these drafts, the later this game goes, the more I'm starting to favor the Styx Ferryman. If we get to the 30-minute mark and the game maintains this level of evenness, if it's only a couple thousand gold separating these two squads, one of these compositions, and it's the Styx Ferrymans, will pull out ahead. So you got to think the Nifleheim Wargs want to play now. This is the portion of the game where they're going to find their money, where they're going to make their bread, where they're going to separate themselves from the Chaos side. One pick could beget a Gold Fury or potentially a Pyromancer. That could net you a lead. You get a couple items of advantage. You can start looking at subsequent objectives and throwing your weight around. But as of now, it's a patient style from the Nifleheim Wargs, and every time they reset to patient styles, they're going to start falling behind because double Golden Blade, Ice Ice, and Azriel are just stripping the entire map. What was, 500 gold a moment ago has now quickly extended to around 1,000, 12, 1,300. That gold lead that was closed up by the team fight is very quickly reestablishing itself in the neutral state.
And we once again see Ice Ice go for a back Harpy invade, and instead of going for a Rage, it was a second item Deathbringer. Caught out by Sarpé. Eyesight's going to use the blink to get away from the bat out of hell. Kha'Zix is here. Eyesight's going to need a little bit of help to get out of this, but he doesn't have any beats to himself. Gets a little bit of healing back with the shield, but does not have the double dash available. It's Sarpé to pick up the kill, put a third one up for the Nifleheim Wargs. But now what will the Wargs do? Pyromancer is up. Rotwin and Gunter are nearby. This will not go for free.
It won't. Rotwin's showing some presence, Gunter as well, and should be Azriel starting his rotation over. Keep your eyes on Streak Up, who's working his way through the jungle, but Pyromancer all the while has been burning quickly.
Pyromancer does go to the Styx Ferryman. Gunter and Rotwin able to find a triple ult in by Azriel in the backline. Ollie slowed down and not able to find a way out. A stun in by Rotwin, and that'll be a good enough for a kill. Ollie goes down. Kha'Zix slowed by Azriel, who's constantly getting these sickles off, constantly getting these flails in the backline. Sarpé even brought down to half HP, but the Ferrymen steal away the Pyro and steal a pick.
The Wargs need Itori nearby if they want to make plays like that. Without your confirmation, it's essentially just handing over the objective. Gunter over the wall, able to strip away the Pyromancer, and despite losing out on the fight, despite Eyesight's falling down first for a back camp invade, it's the Styx Ferrymen who come out ahead on this engagement. But yet again, we get to see the strength of this Chernobog. It's Spudio who makes the rotation to separate that fight, forces the slow onto Eyesight, which allows the time for Ollie to rotate through, connect that route, and finish off this Nemesis, who, although being level 12, had not gone back to base and did not have access to those beads. But that just shows yet again how quick and how slippery this composition is from the Styx Ferryman. Eyesight is deep in enemy territory, and it takes a four-man rotation, a global ultimate slow, a global teleport to chase him out, and he still nearly escaped.
Sarpé uses the ult again aggressively. Spudio goes to the backline to try and find Gunter, but no route to be had. Itori now
So
squaring
deep.
off with this enemy mage, but it's going to be Ollie thrown through the realms by one. Itori left by himself up into the house, and immediately has to cancel the house out. Beads and Aegis burned by the Baba Yaga, and Itori will find a path out.
That is the wildest thing I've ever seen. Itori is 1v1ing on the back camp, and nobody's looking at him. Get on that guy. They're still chasing Ollie.
But on top of Ollie, it's a good ult by Azriel, but Ollie's not low enough to go down just yet. Itori rotating back in will keep the Ferryman away, but what a wild set of trades that we're witnessing here.
Just so surprised at the target allocation from the Styx Ferryman. It's not as if like Itori is sneaking around back there. It's not like he went for a wide flank and nobody knew he was there. He was taking a 1v1 in the enemy back camps as a Baba Yaga at the 16-minute mark. But it's Rotwin and Streak Up who are both focusing on Ollie, who only turn onto Itori when Itori actually W-keyed into him. The first hit that landed on Itori was when he was within 3 units of the enemy ADC. You gotta think, if you're forcing the leap sooner, which should have probably been forced on the back camps, you're probably just getting the kill. You're probably just removing that guy from the game, which could have net you a gold Fury, could have net you a neutral objective, but instead, a little bit of tunnel vision from the squad as they try and finish off a Khepri, who's got Scarab's Blessing for himself and was able to disengage. Net wash, but a crazy fight.
Rotwin misses the stun up against Itori, which could have maybe posed something in the mid lane, but with that Pyromancer down, the Gold Fury, the only neutral objective that's within grabbing range of either of these teams just yet, and the Ferrymen are establishing some pressure around this mid camp. Eyesight and Gunter should be enough to confirm that one for the team as Itori gets poked out by that arcane stance on the Merlin. Gunter able to keep himself fairly healthy in these fights, able to keep himself at least a good distance to get some of this poke back out. But with all of this fighting that's been going through, even with the Nifleheim Wargs finding a couple of picks during their last team fight, it's the 6 Ferrymen who still hold on to that gold lead, 2,800 up for themselves, and the Wargs trying to mitigate some of that with the Gold Fury, but they don't quite have the damage to pull this.
Yeah, Gold Fury's got hands, so whoever's tanking it is going to be losing out on the majority of their HP bar. Similarly, the Wargs lose out on their vision on the Gold Fury as Rotwin walks up on his own and strips away that ward. But with all this presence from the Nifleheim Wargs, it has pulled over the Styx Ferryman. 3 strong in the mid, looking towards the fight. The Nifleheim Wargs reset themselves back to neutral, but every time the Wargs reset themselves, it gives over more time to the Styx Ferryman to continually farm and gear up for these 5-on-5 engagements.
They're only going to be at 4v5 for now. Azriel making his rotation. It's a long one into backline. Goes Itori to try and find Gunter. That's going to be the Aegis burned away by the mid laner. Bat out of hell, not quite enough. Gunter's still alive, but Sarpé does manage to thread the needle and find one. Revive into the backline, but Rotwin finds the stun right off the tail end. Spudio low, uses his dash, but Azriel has finally been able to join in this fight and is already wreaking havoc. Eyesight's up against Spudio, does managed to find a 1-for-1 trade, and it's now Kazakuzo stunned out by Rotwin, slowed down, forced to use the beads,
Oof.
but a leap in by Rotwin is just off the mark to find the stun.
Azriel's tether broken by the Salmon Leap, and the Osiris is forced to reset himself. It's a 1-for-1 trade. ADC for mid lane. Gunter should respawn first and should be able to make the rotation over. The 6 Ferryman very nearly able to separate that team fight. If the stun is good from Rotwin, you gotta think that kill is finished off. But a phenomenal revive from Ollie to keep Spudio alive for a little bit longer and separate the engagement. The 6 Ferryman not able to Voltron up together. Will slow down the fight potential. But it is clear what the strategy is between these two teams. The 6 Ferryman say, all right, when we're all together, that's when we're gonna fight. And the Nifleheim Wargs are saying, I'm not going to let you get together because I'm diving Gunter every single time. Spudio dives in on his own. Sarpei chases out as well. So I think the Styx Ferryman need to shift up that style at least a little bit. Say, hey, maybe we just get back to our Merlin. Let's go play around that guy for a little bit. If we can keep him alive, and if they do, if Gunter survives that initial dive from the Nifleheim Wargs, you can start utilizing that Merlin's damage. In the last 2 or 3 team fights we've seen, it's Gunter targeted out first. And if it's not a KO, it's been a TKO. Can't wait to see what he's actually capable of doing when he's given over a little space.
Do you have Pyromancer go to the Styx Ferryman, back with Gunter being there to help shred that one down. Sarpei finds himself against 3, leaps in against Gunter, and has to use the Bat Out of Hell to go offensively up against Gunter, but with the tier 1 tower there, no chance that Sarpei is going to make that dive, especially not with the fact that Rotwin has now picked up an Emperor's Armor to help on those tower defenses.
Yeah, Emperor's Armor with these enhanced towers in 9-5 really does find some value. So, not really willing to tank it up is Sarpei. He will reset, as you have said. 20-some odd minutes into the game, Pyromancer has fallen down. Gold Fury still remains standing, but the gold difference has continued to grow. It's that same trajectory of, hey, it's been a pretty slow match, and the team that's got the better build for farming has farmed better, lo and behold, and has net themselves a pretty significant advantage in these team fights. Wards, experience, relics, all starting to add up now for the Styx Ferryman. And even when the Nifleheim Wargs are finding these kills, they haven't quite been able to get in towards these objectives, have they? The one time they pull an objective early on, it's just taken away. Gunter very casually strips the first Pyromancer of the game, and since then, it feels as if the Nifleheim Wargs are hesitant to pull out anything on the map, Gold Fury, Pyromancer, or otherwise.
You know, it's got to feel good right now for the Styx Ferryman, Myth. Azriel just hit level 20 and picked up his Bumba Hammer 21 minutes in. He was already feeling unstoppable jumping into that last team fight, fighting against 3 by himself. Now he's got a Bumba's Hammer to help really get that one going. And he'll start so. Gold Fury done by the Styx Ferryman, but there's no Pyromancer on that right side. Nifleheim Wargs rotate over to see if they could get anything, but there was nothing. I don't know if they just missed the sound cue earlier or not.
I thought they were just going to pull the Fire Giant, right? Like, it's not the same level of crit composition as last time around, but Sarpei's got decent auto attack damage. Baba Yaga's got pretty alright burst. You've got a crit build from Spudio. Fire Giant could have potentially been an answer there. You could have at least pulled it and seen how much damage you're capable of doing. Worst case, you reset it, and you take maybe a little bit of damage, and you have to put up a defense around the fire, but curious play. You might be right. I just don't think they knew the Pyro was down.
I mean, there were 3 of them over. They walked over, 2 walked around the wall at the same time. They also went, oh, well, I guess that's done. And then they just walked away. They didn't even wait to see if somebody else would show up, walk in the pit or anything. They just walked up to an empty corridor and decided to turn themselves away. Streak Up now hitting level 20 as well on this Heimdall, going for the boxing match against Spudio. A true 1v1 in this case. It's going to be a while before Ice walks in. Streak Up doesn't have the same level of box back, though, because there's no crit for himself. He'll be able to lifesteal some, thanks to help of that Aussie kicking in, but Spudio will dive himself away from the fight, spots Rotwin out in the jungle. It could be a 3v2 at the very least, but no, Nifleheim Wargs not willing to take a fight.
Yeah, surprise. I like that play from Streak Up. Just man mode W-keying into the opposition. Doesn't really have the build, as you said. Crit over to Spudio means that 1v1 is going to favor Spudio just about every single time, but he is able to force off that global presence, remove that global slow, and give the Styx Ferryman an advantage in this next couple of team fights, at least until that cooldown is back and available. So where will the Styx Ferryman make use of that advantage? Tier 1 mid tower doesn't sound so bad.
Tier 1 mid started up, at least by the minions. Azriel walks into 2 and holds himself away just from the damage that Spudio may have been able to threaten. Streak Up all the while, after taking the boxing match on the left side, he will go back to base alongside his dual lane partner after taking the tier 1 tower. and Azrael just going to be Azrael and W key at the enemy team.
Bumba's Hammer allows you to do that. He didn't take damage. He just healed it all up, and Itori realized, oh, this Osiris actually kind of does enough damage that I need to be concerned about it. And this is the strength of Osiris. Once you do get him over to level 20, Sickle's already on incredibly low cooldown, and for those of you who aren't familiar with what Bumba's Hammer does, every single time you use an ability, it empowers your next auto attack. Think of it as a pseudo poly, giving over 80 additional true damage, but most importantly, 1 second off your cooldown.
We're going to see some of that damage come to fruition against Ollie. Gets the revive off, but that's about all that he is going to do. As Gunter finds the pick, Azrael finds the ult onto Sarpay and gets the bat out of hell away from the assassin. Jungler forced out of the fight. Styx Ferryman are able to shred away the Fire Giant thanks to the help of this Merlin, thanks to the help of the crit from Ice Ice, and all 5 members of Ferryman with the buff around their waist.
Meanwhile, Spadio at least puts some pressure on the map, but Azrael, who has been everywhere, has made the rotation there as well. Gets over to the duo and stops that siege on his own. Meanwhile, the siege goes unchecked by the Styx Ferryman proper. Right side tier 1 falls down, tier 2 now being looked at as well, and it's just Sarpay, Itori, and Kha'Zix here to defend.
Kha'Zix has to use the beads because of Through the Realms, but Kha'Zix is losing a lot of his HP. Sarpay has joined the fight. Aegis Burn out of Gunter and a flicker away, but Ice Ice in the backline finds massive damage up against 1, but Streak Up loses his life to Spadio. All the while, 3 versus 4. Azrael is rotating back around the fight. Rotwin is low, but it's a double ult in by Azrael. Only finds Spadio on the actual route, but Azrael is just fighting all 3.
Yep.
Nobody can do any damage to Azrael. He is boxing for his life. Goes down to about half HP, but the rest of his team going to work on the tower. Azrael might go down, but now the rest of the team has shown up. The Soul Laner can find a path out.
Azrael just buys so much time for the squad, and Ollie says, look, we gotta kill him. We're not gonna get embarrassed by one guy. We're not getting 1v3 jumped by the one, but that's exactly what happens. Once Tether does eventually wear off, that's when the damage started to ring true for Spadio, essentially getting a lot more damage off, but the stain from Bumbas, as well as the passive of Osiris, is just enough to keep him alive, and in dedicating the abduct, Ollie loses his life immediately afterward. The Styx Ferryman take tier 1 and 2 on the right side of the map. Fall back, take Pyromancer for themselves. They may have lost one, and it was an important one to lose. Streak Up, no Fire Giant for the next couple of sieges. It still was a clean team fight for the Styx Ferrymen, who have now got a massive lead.
Over 10,000 gold in the lead, pushing itself upwards towards 11 at this point. 12k experience, though, that matters less and less as these players are hitting level 20. It's only the supports who are behind, and it's a 5-level difference between the supports. That's a lot of base HP, a lot of base protection difference that Rotwin just has over his opposition.
It is, and take a peek at the relics as well. Finished up Bracer for Rotwin, whereas Ollie is still thinking about what type of Heavenly he wants for himself, as the Nifleheim Wargs are grouped up as 5 on the right-hand side of the map, seeing if maybe they can catch any individual member of the Styx Ferryman isolated, or at least try and force separation on the map. They approach the tier 2 as 5 and all hit their B buttons at the exact same time as well. Reset for the Nifleheim Wargs, realizing that the Styx Ferrymen were just on the opposite side of the map. Tier 2 tower, and the dual lane goes down with 0 opposition and nothing gained for the Wargs.
I hope it'll be a tier 2 left, a tier 1 mid, and maybe a tier 2. Trebuchet pushing down 2 separate lanes for the Ferryman as well. Will be able to buy a lot of time and buy some pressure for the Styx Ferryman, but as soon as they take that tier 2, they've separated themselves away from the mid lane at least. Ice Ice still going to be sticking around that side of the map. The rest of the Ferrymen have rotated themselves over towards this mid-left jungle. Leaped by Rotwin. Does find at least just Ollie. Sarpay does leap away, but Sarpay has got to use his leap to get himself on out. Bat out of hell also expended, as Azrael will tank up the Phoenix with a transformation out of Rotwin. And the immediate course after, this left side Phoenix does not stand much of a chance. Streak Up is barreling through the HP bar of the bird, and it goes down.
Mid Phoenix is going to have a similar fate at this rate. Ice Ice taking it down with the help of the Trebuchet. Good space control from the Styx Ferryman affords them this option as Azrael just lines up in front of 4.
Kha'Zix finds 4 in the backline with the ultimate, but he's the only one in the backline to do anything. Gets the transformation right after, and a good Warcry will force the Ferryman back. The Ferrymen have got their prize. They got both the left and the middle Phoenix, thanks to the help of their natural damage, plus those Trebuchets they pushed with it.
Yeah, the Wargs take a very strange path for that defense as well. Again, not present at all for any of the towers, allow those to go down as they put presence on the right side of the map, but do not actually pull the trigger and let that tier 2 tower go unscathed. and the Styx Ferryman, once they did start to approach these Phoenixes, it's Ice who lines up against Spudio in the 1v1, forces the Chernobog to ult defensively very early in the fight, losing not only that global presence, but also the global slow, but also is TKO'd and won't be there for the defense. And afterward, it's a clean Phoenix Siege on the left. Ice has already won his 1v1, so he's able to get a minion wave into the mid Phoenix on his own and a Trebuchet there as well. And the base is broken of the Nifleheim Wargs. I would argue we have not seen a 5-on-5 engagement in defense just yet. We don't know what the 5-on-5 looks like for the Wargs in particular because they haven't tried to do it. But considering the base is already broken, I don't think you can wait and see. You can't say, well, maybe our base defense is good, guys. We haven't done it just yet, but it might be good. No, your base is gone. If you want to keep your game alive, I think you have to take the fight in neutral territory. You need to go for the hero play. You need to be there for the Fire Giant defense. And as of now, well, just about nobody is.
Well, Itori and Ali are here. It's an ult in by Azriel. Finds one. Itori up into the house, but he is being ran at by Azriel. Ali gets burst in the backline for Gunter. The beads come out from Itori, but the beads aren't going to save this Baba Yaga's life. The leap might, though, but Azriel does find the flail over the wall. It's 2 down for the Niflheim Wargs, and it might be 3 right after as the beads are burned by Kha'Zix from the Ferryman.
Just no presence from the Niflheim Wargs as a 5-stack yet again. It's 3 members caught out in the jungle, lose out around the Fire Giant. 2 dead. Itori for 40 and Ollie for 20, and the 6 Ferrymen, 5 strong, have only got 3 standing between them and the Titan.
5 versus 3. Spudio does have ult, but his crits are doing absolutely nothing to Azriel. Another big ult in the backline by Kha'Zix, but it's not going to find anything. The Titan is melting, and the 6 Ferrymen will walk away with game number 2.
Just curious macro play from the Niflheim Wargs. It seems like they lost the thread post 20 minutes into this game. That tier 2 siege on the right, immediately into this Fire Giant play where one member is sieging mid, one member is on the duo lane. You think to yourself, well, Chernobog can get involved. He's got global presence. That makes sense. Sure, send him over, and if the fight starts, he'll ult over. That doesn't happen. He just goes back to base to try and defend his Titan because his team had already fallen down. 6 Ferrymen, on the other hand, they just look good.
Yeah, no, I think that's the best way to put it. Also, Azrael's a monster and was basically unkillable at that point. On that base defense, he ults in, tethers, and those crits were hitting for like 74, 80 damage.
Feels bad.
You're not going to kill a probably near 3k HP Osire with crit damage like that. And with it, the 6 Ferrymen are able to find themselves at game number 2. And the set up against the Niflheim Wargs. Early pressure and really early game. I mean, it took us 10.5 minutes in game 1 to get a first blood. This time, Niflheim Wargs trying to be active, trying to be proactive, to go for these blue buff invades. Goes south right away, and Ice able to get his team on the board only 2.5 minutes in.
Yeah, that blue buff invade, I think, might have been one of the last times we saw the Niflheim Wargs really being the initiator. Otherwise, it's this nemesis that is constantly putting pressure onto the enemy jungle, constantly on those back camps, at times approaching the speed buff, controlling the blue buff side of the map. Sarpe really didn't get an opportunity to flex his wings this time around. The Kamazots didn't do a whole lot of damage at the early portion of the games. He goes for that slower style of build with Transcendence in the first slot, and he just gets outpaced by Ice in the jungle. And by the time anybody started to look at Azriel, he was already a menace. This is a little bit earlier on. Doesn't have the Bumbus Hammer just yet, but still showing shades of what he was capable of a little bit later into the game. And now that he has got the Bumbus Hammer, he's just going to continue to make plays like this. Ult in, utilize the mitigation from your passive and your kit, and all that healing and true damage that you get otherwise to just stick to his targets.
And we saw multiple times where Itori would find good houses to find these knockbacks, to find these knockups, and really push these guys away, but every single one of those same houses was immediately canceled after. He didn't even have a chance to utilize the damage from that ultimate. It was constantly just used as a form of CC immunity more than anything. They got off him and then immediately got right back on him.
Yeah, just not a great composition, I think, from the squad there. The Niflheim Wargs, I feel maybe a little bit out-draft, maybe a little bit out-itemized, and in game 2, outmaneuvered. That was just clean, objective play that nets the dub for the boys there.
Maybe some growing pains, at least from the team. You know, new mid laner coming in, Itori for the squad, replacing Angry. Then you had Ollie, who got, is having to deal with some extra stuff as well. Now that you're throwing, Rotwin over to the side of the Ferrymen. Ferrymen able to really kind of make use of their new support, really make use of their full team as a squad. And really, when it comes down to it, every time I see these Osirises now, every time I see these Vimanas, I'm going to be keeping my eyes on that solo lane because it is just absolutely devastating every time we're seeing one of those gods come through, Biff.
I think so, but Osiris a little bit less so. I mean, like, once you got Bumba's Hammer, sure. Like, yeah, that god is just gross. Vamana, on the other hand, maybe a little bit more so in the jungle, slightly more, hey, I'm just going to go into the Colossal Fury and chase you down style of play. But you're right to say that maybe it is. What was the verbiage that we got from the pros yesterday during the media day? Propaganda from some of these solo laners. Just Warriors seem to be pretty good still. And, like, if they seem good, they look good, they sound good, they're probably just good.
It seems that they are just good if we're going at least by the stats that went from this game. We'll take a look at the schedule. Nifleheim Wargs go down 2-0 to the Styx Ferryman, who are able to find themselves a nice win today. Next game up is going to be the Highland Ravens up against Hex Mambo, and then once again tomorrow we'll finish out the EU with the Gilded Gladiators and the Aru Scorpions in their mix out there. But it's going to be a nice win, at least for the Styx Ferryman, to kind of get themselves going. Now they sit at that 1-1, and you could have fooled me that that was the 0-1 team going into that matchup. A nice win out of the Styx Ferryman, able to keep themselves at least in that middle pack for now.
The Nifleheim Wargs will similarly separate themselves a bit, now the only team at 0-2. They gotta hope that the Gilded Gladiators don't win their set, right? So they can at least have a bit of parity in the standings, but congratulations over to the Ferrymen to find their first win of the phase so far, and if they continue to play like that, I'm sure we'll see plenty more.
And I mean, this is Nifleheim Wargs. They were the #1 seed in last phase. I mean, this is the team that was dominating the pack. I believe only dropped one single set throughout the entirety of that phase. Now not looking maybe as strong as they once were. We'll see if they can pick it up, and we'll see how our next set goes. That's be coming up right after this break.